there's this guy, this filmmaker named Turner Clay, I think is his name. I don't think he ever says his name in any of these movies he's made, called The Blackwell Ghost. But you can see it there on Amazon whenever you order it. It comes up and it just says Director Turner Clay, starring Turner Clay, and like no one else. There may be like some other supporting actors, like the woman who plays his wife occasionally, who may actually be his wife. I'm not sure. And there's some other supporting characters who play like I don't know, the son of a serial killer who's been dead for years, the mother of a girl who was killed by a serial killer. Yeah, they're just these actors, these supporting actors who were in this film series called The Blackwell Ghost, who are so good. You really do watch these movies thinking that they're actual documentaries. Yeah, but they're not, because of the fantastical supernatural stuff that happens toward the ends of these movies. But everything that leads up to them, the ends of these movies where like crazy supernatural stuff happens, is so real and so compelling that you have to think that, you know, maybe we are just living in one of many worlds. Maybe the supernatural world is not really supernatural, but we're the supernatural world to it, if that makes any sense. But yeah, these movies, The Blackwell Ghost, have been a fixture of my household during the summer for about the last 5 or 6 years. Usually a new one comes out almost every single summer. Sometimes it comes out during the fall or the early winter or whatever. Just whenever this guy finishes these movies, he releases them onto Amazon and like nowhere else. And he doesn't do any publicity for them. There's no hype behind them. The only way that you would just know if they were coming out at all is if you were just kind of streaming. You were filing past all the movies that you can stream on Amazon, and it just pops up. And it's always kind of a nice surprise, because these are indeed, I think, some of the best ultra low budget movies, found footage movies that have been made of ever. And up until really like very recently, nobody seemed to know about them. Nobody seemed to really talk about them. And then they've kind of suddenly started catching on. Like my wife and I were watching one of the most recent movie, The Blackwell Ghost 7, the other night. And it just ends with like kind of, it just says to be continued. All the movies end with to be continued. And naturally you're just kind of sitting there in a dark apartment, complete silence after the movie ends, and you're just like, well, when's the next movie coming out? And obviously you do what you always do. You go and Google to see what the, you go onto the IMDb to see what's going on with production. But you find nothing. This guy, Turner Clay, is just so standoffish about doing media for these movies. I think all he wants to do is just make the movies, release them, and then just kind of let them take on a life of their own, which for years and years they did not do, and now recently they're doing it. People are wondering when the next one's going to come out, but of course he's not saying. And I like this guy Turner Clay in that fashion. I like the fact that he's just kind of this guy who makes these movies. He puts a lot into them, and he just lets people have them. And does absolutely nothing at all to promote them, because they probably don't cost a whole lot of money to make. They get a little bit progressively expensive as the movies go on. Like, he gets some new equipment, some new cameras, some new lights. At one point, he actually has to buy a house to go and film all of his ghost footage, although I'm pretty sure he already owns the house. That's just part of the narrative. But I'm not sure. You really do not know what's real and what's not in these movies called The Blackwell Ghost. And I know I'm being very elliptical about what this film series actually is. If you already know, you know. But just in case you don't, I'll kind of go into a little bit of a history. Because I've been meaning to talk about the Blackwell Ghost on this show for a very long time. By the way, I'm Mike Booty. Thank you for joining me. This is the Midnight Citizen Show. I'm your host, Mike Booty. And it's hardly midnight right now. It's about 9:30 in the morning on a Friday. And yeah, I'm about to go out and do some work in a little while, but before that, I thought I'd sit out here and talk about the Blackwell Ghost while I have my cup of coffee. So yes. Yeah, Turner Clay, the best I can I can figure out about him, there's very little information about him online. I mean, it's almost like there's more information right now about Thomas Pynchon, the reclusive author of Gravity's Rainbow and several other really interesting postmodern books. Online, I mean, it's like really, you could find out more about Thomas Pynchon than you can about Turner Clay. What we basically know about him is what he's told us in the movies, is that in the first movie, he kind of talks about how he was in Hollywood for many, many years, like kind of since the mid-90s, making, I guess, writing, directing, and starring in a bunch of very low-budget zombie movies that I guess in the early 2000s were like on direct to video, and then direct to streaming after that. And then I think he just kind of got disillusioned with the whole business, and he decided to move. He got married, he moved away from LA, and then he just came back home to Kentucky, I guess, where he's from. And you can definitely tell he's a real Kentucky guy. I mean, he's very down home, very southern in his manner of speech and his just his ways of behaving, the way he just absolutely loves whiskey. He always drinks whiskey in order to, whenever he gets afraid of ghosts and things like that. Like that's his proton pack. You know, in Ghostbusters, they use proton packs, and the Blackwell Ghost, he uses Kentucky bourbon. So, but he comes back from Kentucky and kind of has this crisis a little bit, this existential crisis about what he's going to do creatively, because he knows he's always wanted to make movies, but making zombie movies for, that go direct to the shelves of Blockbuster videos all across the country wasn't really fulfilling to him. And he's kind of like, what can I do next with all this film knowledge and some of this equipment that I have? And he's surfing YouTube and comes across like this mysterious ghost video. And he's like, these videos are always popping up on YouTube all the time. And all the comments seem to be either loving it or hating it, saying it's real or it's fake. Well, nobody's ever really taken the time to investigate whether it's fake or not. So let me just do that, and I'll just kind of film myself investigating, like calling up the people, the place where this video originated, and just kind of getting to the bottom of it. And I'm just going to film myself the whole time doing it. And that kind of leads to a dead end, but nevertheless, after all of his efforts are expended on finding out if this YouTube ghost video is real, this random guy that he met on the internet reaches out to him and says that I have a haunted house. Would you like to come and check it out? And Turner Clay decides, like, hey, I'm unemployed. I'm an out-of-work filmmaker, so yeah, I'll go and check out your haunted house. And he kind of gets in his, he's like a pilot, so he gets in his, small engine plane with his wife, Terry. And, they go a couple states over. I think they're in Virginia for a few days. And they stay in this haunted house. They're like, the guy likes them enough, and he decides to let them house sit. And the guy says, over the course of the 50 years that I've been living in this house, we've always had these weird, unexplained instances happen. Doors opening and closing by themselves. At one point, all the doors in the house just shut all at once. And I never know what's going on. And he takes him down to the basement, and he says, I'm going to show you something down here. And I'm just going to warn you that everybody that I show this to has usually run out of the house screaming. So at this point, this is where we kind of get to like Turner Clay a little bit, because a lot of times people would be out of there. This is a guy that they don't know, that they met over the internet, who is saying, I'm going to take you into my basement. to show you something that everybody else just sees and runs out of this house screaming. And he's thinking like maybe this is like a Buffalo Bill situation or something. But, you know, Turner Clay, because he's a curious, investigative guy, decides to go down into this basement. And down in the basement, they see this very interesting kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, an infrastructural anomaly. There's a well in the basement, which I know a lot of houses have wells in the basement. But this one is down there, and it's kind of got this little tool, this like these set of pliers that are wedged in the well to kind of keep it open. And the guy says that the former woman who owned this house many, many years ago used to abduct children from the neighborhood and kill them, and then when she was done with them, stuff their bodies down into this well. So that's the origin of the name Blackwell and Blackwell Ghost. The other part of it, Ghost, comes from the fact that Turner Clay believes, after staying in this house for a couple days, that this woman named Ruth Blackwell. I know. There's a black well in the basement. Her name is also Ruth Blackwell. So this is where the story gets a little bit ridiculous, but he looks up newspapers and he believes this woman Ruth Blackwell is haunting the house because there's a moment toward the end of the movie, and all these movies kind of end the same way, with a very long shot that he takes himself. He has like a little camera, and he's kind of investigating, walking through the house, just investigating a series of noises and disturbances, before something scares him so much that he runs out of the house in terror and doesn't go back until the next movie. And I won't spoil it for you what it is, but the end of the Blackwell Ghost, it's very, very disturbing and very interesting scene. And I think what's so great about these movies, you know, they've been making found footage movies for years. You know, found footage movies, okay? They're movies where, you know, people, it's like home video. People have their home video cameras. They're taking pictures of each other. At the beginning, they're having a great time. They're going like to a haunted location or something like that. And they're really glib about it, and they're kind of sarcastic and mocking and postmodern, and they just don't think that ghosts exist. And then at the end, they find out ghosts exist, but by the time that they find that out for true, it's too late, and the ghost killed them or something like that. And then a few days later, their footage is found. So, you know, we see these like very early examples of these movies, or like the Blair Witch Project. There's another movie that came out right before the Blair Witch Project called The Last Broadcast, which is really good. I'd recommend that one. And yeah, there's been just countless found footage movies over the years. Paranormal Activities is one, that whole series. Yeah, they are kind of all the same. But I will say, my wife loves them, and she can put them on and just go to sleep to them. I don't know. There's something comforting to her about them. You know, me on the other hand, I get a little bit on edge with them. I have to be in kind of the right mood to watch a found footage movie. And also, just found footage movies are just like a great big pile of turds with gold occasionally in them, right? You know, it is like, because they are so low budget, they take almost no talent at all to make them. Most of the time, like 99 times out of 100, you're going to get a really, really bad, ugly turd, right? But occasionally you'll get gold, okay? And occasionally this gold will actually be invested in by major studios. That's kind of how you know a found footage movie is generally going to be okay if it's like a kind of AAA found footage movie, like a Paranormal Activity. Even though I don't really care for those movies that much. The first three are kind of fun. But yeah, like most of the movies that you see just on Amazon, right, that just come up out of nowhere with no hype, no publicity, you know that they're going to just be like A couple of people just shot this movie in 2 days. They uploaded it to Amazon to make like a quick buck in the streaming market. Okay, whatever. So that's kind of what we thought the Blackwell Ghost was going to be like. But I think this guy Turner Clay really discovered something, like a niche in these found footage markets. And he's really like, okay, everybody comes to a found footage movie knowing by now that they're fake. It's not like in the days of the Blair Witch Project where nobody had really seen this before, and they launched a very good viral marketing, guerrilla marketing campaign to make everybody think that this was a real thing. I remember being in high school, and there were still people after that movie came out who convinced that it was real. Yeah. The crazy old days, the naive days of the late 90s. So, right. But I think Turner Clay's approach to it is like we live in like a postmodern found footage market, okay? Like where people have gone from just thinking that it's real to knowing that it's not real, but going along with it anyway and kind of making fun of it, to now we're just back to found footage as a genre. Let's just make a found footage movie and just make it as ridiculous as we can possibly make it. And some of these are fun. There was a movie that came out last year on Shudder, AMC's horror streaming network, called Deadstream, which is a really, really fun movie. It was a found footage movie, but so ridiculous and over the top. There's no way you could have ever, even like a 2-year-old could have figured out it wasn't real, but it was still a really fun movie. It really is like almost like an Evil Dead type movie, but with found footage. So I'll quit digressing. So, but Turner Clay and all of this found footage oversaturation discovered something. He kind of discovered that, like, let's actually use the found footage genre to really experience the psychology that in humans, that this sense that human beings have that there are two worlds, and that sometimes our efforts to connect to them are so sincere that we can actually manifest a portal to that other world. And his movies are incredibly real and fascinating. There's no like ghost jumping out at him, and there's no people nobody dies at the end of any of his found footage movies. The Blackwell Ghost, like that's the thing. That's a trope of the genre, is that somebody always has to die at the end of these movies in order for the footage to be found. So even to call these movies a found footage movie would be like misrepresentative. All of his movies, up until kind of the last scene, are very much real and documentary evidence. And he is building a fictional story, but he's doing it in such a real way that you really do wonder what's real and what's not. And then at the end, it's not real, but by that time, you're so invested in the reality of what he's kind of trying to communicate, the underlying truth, right? And I don't know if I'm explaining myself very well, but this is kind of the reason why, we love good fiction, because good fiction is a series of, invented circumstances with some kind of underlying truth behind them. So, I mean, even though this kid is not really traveling back to 1955 and trying to get his parents back together and all that, that's a fiction, but the truth behind it is still real. That there are, valleys that exist between teenagers trying to relate to their parents. And the only way for a teenager to truly relate to their parents, right, is to actually be the same age as their parents and see what they're going through. So that was like Back to the Future, of course, right? So, but the Blackwell Ghost is like, it's like the greatest mystery on earth that we will never ever know is what happens after we die. So let's invent it. I guess this guy Turner Clay is like, let's invent this scenario. Okay, what happens after we die, and let's try and go in and actually investigate that. That's the fiction, but the truth is actually trying to figure out the psychology within ourselves. What is going on in our own lives that makes us so curious about that? Well, the ultimate thing is that it's the very reason why Turner Clay quit the film business and came back to Kentucky to his home, because we are constantly unsure about what we're doing on this earth. We don't know what our purpose is. We don't know what our existence is. And when Turner Clay comes back from Los Angeles to Kentucky, he's about my age now. He's in his early 40s. And he doesn't quite feel like he's done anything in his life yet that he can look back on proudly and say that I left some kind of a mark. And he's just kind of like, am I on this earth just to make zombie movies for Blockbuster in mom and pop video stores across the country, or am I on this earth for something a little bit better? I've got all this equipment, all this creative training, and all this creativity in me. Is that all I'm doing in this earth is just making zombie movies? So we are constantly just unsure about what we're doing on this earth. And the whole reason that Turner Clay decides to just investigate ghosts is because he's like, in the afterlife is when we are apparently absolutely sure about what we're doing on earth, and or what we did on earth, or we know exactly what we are in the afterlife. Like, all questions in almost every single afterlife scenario that we can think of are answered. So, and yeah, that's just kind of what he's trying to figure out. So it's a fiction with an underlying truth. And I think that's what makes those movies so interesting and so different from all these other found footage movies, where the purpose is just to scare you, and that's fantastic. That's great. But it gets a little bit tired after a while. And you want a little bit something more sometimes when you watch a horror movie, okay? So I hope I explained this well. This is the Blackwell Ghost series. It's been coming out. I think he's been releasing almost a movie every single year since like 2014 or 2015. And they kind of start with Turner Clay investigating this house where this lady, Ruth Blackwell, killed all these kids. The second movie kind of goes back to that house. And the third movie takes a dramatic turn where he actually starts investigating like a serial killer case in Florida. This house where the serial killer, took all these people and killed them before he killed himself. And years later, Turner Clay starts getting these like weird, mysterious dream messages, these messages in his dreams about kind of pulling him to that house. And so he goes down to this house in Florida, which is very unassuming. It's not like a big haunted house like you see in all these like great Victorian romances or something like that. It's just like this Airbnb ranch home on the side of this lake, just a very average Florida guest home. And he goes in there and kind of investigates and kind of starts to, over the course of the next few movies, uncover the mystery of the serial killer named Lightfoot. Yeah, these movies just do a very good job of convincing you that that they are real, that they're based on real stuff, and I think like Turner Clay is just a very good presence. He's like a very interesting creative, because his movies do talk about the creative process quite a bit. Because in the beginning of the Blackwell Ghost 1, he's this very creatively he's very frustrated creatively. He doesn't know what he wants to do. And I think that this is, anybody who's creative can kind of relate to this. Because what I'm doing right now, just kind of sitting out here in the back of my apartment building having coffee, it may not seem very creative, but it is. It's kind of an amalgam of a whole bunch of stuff that I've done in my life that have led me up to this point where I'm just like, I'm tired of working with people on creative projects. I just kind of want to like just do something on my own. And that's why I started doing the Midnight Citizen podcast. So, and yeah, going back to what I was saying a really long time ago, and what I was only expecting to be like a 5-minute opening to this latest episode of the Midnight Citizen show, is that Turner Clay does these movies all by himself. yeah, occasionally his wife Terry hops in there, but his wife Terry is very representative of our loved ones who sometimes encourage us to be creative, but they don't really understand the links that we go to. My wife is not like Terry at all. She's very encouraging, but Terry is very much like that. So, but other than Terry, like he does these movies kind of like all by himself. He just is a one man film crew, and I've always been drawn to that because yeah, film is like the ultimate creative collaboration. You need a lot of people to make a movie, and he found a way through the found footage genre to not only make a really interesting movie that kind of comments on the creative condition, but also do it completely by himself. And reminds me of like another really interesting film that was also done completely by one person. Operating the camera, operating the sound, acting, and all that stuff. And it was Richard Linklater, who, before he made the movie Slacker, made a movie called It's Impossible to Learn How to Plow by Reading Books. And nobody saw this movie, and it was unavailable for many, many years until they finally released it. The Criterion Collection finally released it in a collection with the movie Slacker. But yeah, this is a movie that Richard Linklater made in the late 80s, where he is just kind of hauling a film camera. He gets like a train pass, on Amtrak. You can still do this today. I looked it up. You can actually go onto Amtrak and just get a pass that allows you to get so many hop-ons and hop-offs throughout the United States. And so he buys this pass and just, kind of films himself in character traveling across the country. And it's very much exactly like the Blackwell Ghost in many ways, even though there's like no ghost and everything. But it really is just him trying to kind of figure out what he wants to do creatively. Yeah, because a lot of us, we're dropped onto this planet. We kind of get a few years of leeway where we can kind of do whatever we want. We can go and play and make mistakes with no consequences. And then eventually we kind of get trained, like at a job. We get trained to go out and do things, to go out and get a job and make our own money, and maybe we understand now how to live a little bit. We know how to go to the grocery store. We know how to go to the DMV, how the DMV works, kind of how the post office works a little bit. So we know all these things about how to cooperate in life, and then suddenly it just kind of stops for a lot of people. Like you know how to do all these things, and now all you have to do is just do them for the rest of your life and derive meaning from it. And so many people just can't do that. They just kind of end up their lives doing the same thing over and over again and kind of working toward things like retirement and all that. And I'm not at all, I know it sounds constantly on the show like I'm shitting on people who just want to retire and just go sit on a beach somewhere. Like, I'm not at all. I think that's great. But yeah, like for people like Turner Clay and people like Richard Linklater, these guys, I think, just get to a point where it's like, okay, I'm trained now. I don't want to just do that for the rest of my life. I want to actually, go out and make things that are interesting, right? And that's the creative temperament. And so, yeah, I think the Blackwell Ghost film series by Turner Clay and It's Impossible to Learn How to Plow by Reading Books by Richard Linklater are two incredibly interesting, completely solo directed movies with zero collaboration, thrown together by Scotch tape, that are excellent comments on the solo creative adventure, where you're in it on your own and nobody else is around to help you or guide you, and you're just kind of figuring out what you want to do by yourself, but filming it at the same time. Okay. So, if that makes any sense. Shit, I just spilled coffee on my shirt. I gotta change my shirt now before I go out and deliver food. Out delivering for the lunch shift. Friday, so it's usually pretty busy. People are at the end of their week. They don't want to go out and get lunch. They just want to go into work and get it all done as soon as possible to get on to the weekend. So, just went into a Taco Bell. One way to pretty much slow down your momentum when delivering food is to go into a fast food restaurant. It's usually pretty fast if you go into a place where people sit down and eat. But yeah, fast food restaurants. I guess it's just, I don't know, these days it's really hard to get people to work in fast food. It's such an unglamorous position. And really got to be very difficult to work in those restaurants. One thing I find is fascinating about fast food restaurants is, especially after COVID, so many of their cafes are closed. You have to go through the drive-through. Again, I guess that's just because they can't find enough people to work in these restaurants that they can either do cafe service or they can do drive-through service. And I'm expecting that also just these people who work at these restaurants don't want to have to clean the cafe, because that's like a lot of work, a lot of mopping, a lot of restocking. And so they just closed the cafe, even though I guess they can probably service both. I don't know. I just went into a Taco Bell. Taco Bell is usually pretty quick. They're one of the good ones. Even though I cannot stand to eat at Taco Bell. But I don't mind delivering there because I know the food's always going to be ready. Just walk right in, pick it up, and go. It was crazy. I went to a Wendy's yesterday, and that's probably the worst of the worst fast food restaurants, other than maybe like Popeyes or KFC or something like that. Yeah, Wendy's was just completely gutted on the inside. Like even if you wanted to come in and order and sit down, like all of their staff, they were devoted to the drive-through, so they were helping all the people at the drive-through and occasionally coming up to help people in the cafe. And yeah, I was just like looking around, and like nothing in the cafe was stocked or working. There were like no ketchup packets, no mustard packets. Their Coke machine, which is one of those things where you push the button and it dispenses all sorts of kinds of Cokes, one of those digital Coke machines, was out of service, and it was just gutted. Like the parts, mechanics of it were just hanging out all over the place. This is the Wendy's across from the Sammy's strip club on Valley Avenue. And yeah, it was just depressing. It's so weird because a lot of these restaurants are like that now. I feel like more and more we're reversing our realities with video games. Like in video games, you used to be able to like drive around the city streets and you would pass all these facades for stores, but you couldn't go into the stores, right? They were just there for presentation to create a sense of reality. Couldn't go into stores like in real life. But now I feel like that's opposite, because more and more video games are allowing us to actually go in and explore the stores that we cross in city streets, like like you think of the Grand Theft Auto games or something like that. And now like you can't really go into many of the stores that you pass in real life. Like I said, a lot of drive-throughs are open, but you can't go into the stores. You pull on the handles and they're locked. Yeah, I feel like we're kind of trading places with video games a little bit, where video games are becoming more real, and increasingly the world that we drive around in, the real world, is just facade. I don't know. Explain that one to me. I finally got my window fixed. Yeah, it broke last week. On the last episode of my show, I had to go to the drive-in ticket window and open up my door to buy a ticket. And I apologized to them for some reason for not being able to roll my window down because it was broken. I don't know why I did that. They didn't care. But yeah, I've only had this car 2 months and already something broke on it. So I really hope that's not a sign of things to come. You know, when you buy a new car, you're kind of hoping to stay away from service departments and mechanics for a while, except for basic routine service like oil changes and brake pads and things like that. But yeah, I went in because I don't know, the car came with the defect. The regulator broke on it, and it's really tough during the stormy season here in Alabama because you know, it rains like almost every single night. So I had to go home that night. I had to like put a tarp over the window. I couldn't close the door all the way. I tried to get the window up. It kept falling down on me. My wife and I just kind of worked on trying to wedge some cardboard, you know, into the gap to make it stick. It just didn't work. It's really frustrating. And I went online at the dealership and made an appointment. Said I was coming in at Monday at 2. And I went there on Monday at 2, and nobody knew I was coming in. Nobody had checked the appointment log. Nobody had even looked to see why I was coming in. 4 people kept on coming out to me, 4 service technicians, being like, "What are you in here for today?" And they kept looking over my card, and they kept saying, "You know, you're at a Honda dealership, right?" And I said to them, "Yeah, no, I'm confused too. Why I was able to buy a Hyundai at a Honda dealership." But I showed them the appointment. They said, you know, it said to come on in. And they kept on telling me, like, well, I don't know how you were able to make that appointment. And so you can imagine I got very frustrated just out of the gate. You know that you're going to get frustrated whenever you go to like a dealership service department. You know you're going to get screwed. But I had bought this plan with this car a couple of months ago to kind of ensure that I wouldn't get screwed, or I would get a little bit less screwed. But yeah, nevertheless, there I was just getting screwed right out of the gate. And I got so irritated because they kept on coming out and saying, like, I don't know if we can work on this car. It's a Hyundai. Of course, there was that whole back and forth. Well, I made the appointment. You guys knew I was coming in. And finally, this guy comes around to me. It goes all the way up the chain to the manager of the used car service department. And he was like, well, a lot of the guys here, man, they're used to working on Hondas all day long, but when they see a Hyundai or any other kind of make, they kind of freak out a little bit. I thought, man. And I didn't want to be that guy. I was really trying to just hold my cool and not be that guy who just loses his temper in the service department. But nevertheless, I kind of lost my temper a little bit. Especially when the guy said, like, well, we're not supposed to do this, but I'm going to go in there and I'm going to see if I can move heaven and earth to get this car fixed. And that just made me super pissed. It was like, move heaven and earth? You knew I was coming in here. I bought this car here 2 months ago, not 5 feet away from where we're standing right now. And they gave me this plan. They said, come on in here whenever you have technical, mechanical problems with your car, and we'll fix it. I felt like that guy in Fargo. These guys here and those guys there.
It's always the same.
It's just experiencing one of those just certainties in life. Sitting in a dealership waiting room, not having any idea how much I'm going to pay for something, not having any idea when it's going to be ready or when it's going to break again. And this guy Tom comes out and helps me, and I'm super rude and short to that guy. Like, I know that this is not something that you were supposed to be dealing with after you buy a new car. But it just happens, and one of the tests in life is just the test of your temperament is to see if you can just hold your cool and not be like all these other customers in the waiting room, these entitled, self-righteous customers. You're sitting in there in the waiting room. Other than going to prison or being in jail, it really is like the closest you can come as an adult to being in like a detention. Sitting in there with all these other people who are in there for sentences, claiming that they didn't do what they said that they, what they're there for. It's like they never claim that they do anything to their cars. It's always a manufacturing defect, or it's some kind of error that the service department made. It's never their fault.
And I got to look and both of them go, now why they check them both out, I don't know. But I came back up here and they had to go over in parts and get me another, which mine were chrome. And the ones they got me were black,
Just sitting in there, like, listening to all their stories. There's one guy in the waiting room who kept talking about how he had stood up to the mechanics, saying that what's wrong with my car is your problem, and you're going to fix it, and you're going to pay for it. And I was sitting in the waiting room for an hour, and different people kept on cycling through, and he kept on telling them the same stories. And he was always the hero of the story, even though somehow he was the one sitting in detention. So yeah, I didn't like it, but I was super rude to this guy Tom, the manager who helped me out, who finally decided to say to me, just go in the waiting room and we'll see what we can do. I'll move heaven and earth for you. I'll see what I can do. And I was like, just, okay, fine, move heaven and earth. Even though you knew I was coming in, you knew my appointment was there, you just, for some reason, decided not to look at it. And I'm a complete surprise to you right now, So I'm sitting there in the waiting room for a while, and I'm kind of cooling off. My temper is just slowly cooling off. I've got free coffee in there, free Coca-Cola, free chips. I'm doing some schoolwork on my computer and just kind of cooling off and listening to all these self-righteous customers talk about how it's never their fault. It may not be their fault, but they're just sitting in there and they can't talk about anything else except how they're all getting screwed, because that's what's brought them together. It's like the Breakfast Club or something like that. And it just gives me a little bit of perspective, right? Like, these people in the service department probably have, other than fast food, like some of the most unglamorous, thankless jobs, right? Like, I know people always talk about how teachers have very thankless jobs, but there's occasionally, I think, some reward in it. I don't know if there's any reward in it for somebody who works in a dealership service department. I could be wrong, but listening to all these people and their collective irritation and hatred for the people who are out there working in like 95-degree heat to get their cars fixed. I mean, there's nobody else to be mad at, so they got to be mad at somebody. So it just kind of cools me down and gives me some perspective. And finally, this guy Tom comes in and he says, like, listen, man, I'm sorry that we didn't look at your appointment form, and it wasn't like I had to move heaven and earth for you or anything like that, but I was able to kind of order the part, and we're going to fix your window temporarily. We're going to wedge some stuff in there to get the window just to stay up so your car doesn't get rained in, and come back in 2 days. That's when the part will be in, and we'll get it fixed for you. And so I shook his hand, and we were cool. And over the next couple of days, he called me a handful of times, just letting me know where the part was. He was like my personal UPS tracking number. And I always thanked him. And sure enough, the part came in exactly when he said it was going to be. I waited as long as he said I was going to have to wait. And I was actually kind of looking forward to going back into the waiting room because it was an expected time. It was an expected problem now. I also knew exactly how much I was going to pay in the deductible. Ended up paying like a little bit less than he said and waiting a little bit less than he said. So it was fine. And my window works now. And hopefully that's the last I'll see of Tom for a while. Even though it was genuinely kind of a nice experience, even though I am now out working right now to kind of try and get back some of the money that I spent. And I just got an order from Chick-fil-A. Another restaurant, kind of like Taco Bell, that's always really fast, in and out. In and out. Came up here and just waited for another order in this gigantic parking lot up here on Grants Mill Road, where you got a lot of these secondhand stores. And I was remembering that about 12 years ago, there was a gigantic like recreation center in this parking lot. Most of it was a zip line. They built this gigantic zip line in the middle of this parking lot. And kind of expected it to be a big hit because, like I was saying a couple of episodes back, zip lining was a really big deal. It was like a trendy thing to do all over America around 2012, 2013. And I worked on a zip line at a park where there was shade, not like in some kind of unshaded, gigantic behemoth asphalt parking lot. And yeah, sure enough, it's not here anymore because zip lining was definitely a trend, and then it just kind of people stopped doing it because it's kind of like once you do it once, it's kind of over. But yeah, I remember the zip line came up to that parking lot, and the people who managed it started poaching the people who worked with me at the zip line out at the park. And one of the guys I worked with, indeed, like actually went to manage it for a while. So it got very nasty in the competitive ziplining industry. And then just it went bust. And like I said, the zip line I used to work at has not been open since before COVID. I don't know if it'll ever open again. All the platforms and the zip lines are still out there, but I don't know if they're ever going to open it again. Of course, it's summertime, and you always get these signs staked in the yard congratulating the seniors who live there. And then in just a couple of weeks, it's going to be like class of 2026. Kids just entering high school, the cycle starting all over again. This is one of those neighborhoods in Birmingham that you can get a house in right now for about $85,000. Every place else in Birmingham, at least $120,000, $130,000 range. But out here, it's not bad. And these houses aren't that terrible. It's a nice neighborhood. There's people out doing yard work, and I think sometimes just people assume that the further away from like the city center you get, or places where there's not like grocery stores, like Publix or something like that, like nice grocery stores, it's just not a good place to live. I don't know. I kind of disagree. I mean, yeah, it's like coming up and down the streets. There's a ton of like title loan places, these places that'll charge you like 200% interest for taking out a payday loan. But if you can get past that, I mean, it's like 5 minutes away from the city. Really close to the freeway where you can access everything pretty quickly. I could see getting a house in a place like this. Places that aren't gentrified yet. There's a Piggly Wiggly I just passed. Steve, a couple episodes back, commented on... asked me if there are still any Piggly Wigglies in Alabama, because I was talking about the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and you know, one of the big things they do in that movie to convince everybody that aliens are not landing is they invent this anthrax disaster, like there's a train derailment that spills a bunch of hazardous materials all over the land, and so they have to evacuate people. And they kind of move in the army and the scientists and all the equipment that they're using to communicate with the aliens at Devil's Tower. They move them in all these trucks, and a lot of them are like Piggly Wiggly trucks. And I don't know if there are any Piggly Wigglies in Wyoming where the movie takes place and where part of it was shot, but there are definitely a lot of Piggly Wigglies in Alabama, which is where the movie was shot mostly. Most of Close Encounters of the Third Kind was shot in South Alabama near Mobile. It's pretty much everything you see in that movie that's doesn't look like Wyoming is in Mobile, Alabama. And so that's the reason for a lot of Piggly Wiggly trucks, is because that's primarily a southern grocery store chain. So yeah, there are a lot of Piggly Wigglies still in Alabama. I shop at one almost every single day. Back to Taco Bell. It never fails. Whenever I go into a Taco Bell, I always think about that movie Roger and Me, with the Michael Moore movie. I think it was his first documentary he made about the utter decline of Flint, Michigan after General Motors shut down the plant and moved out of there and laid off all these workers and just left the town to rot. And ever since then, Flint, Michigan has kind of been the just the poster child of utter urban decay and just America's post-industrial wasteland. I don't know. But yeah, in that movie, after all these auto workers are shut down, they start just going to work for the fast food franchises in town, and they go into a Taco Bell, and they interview a manager there who's, this is in the 80s, and the manager is just so incredibly proud of his job. Working and managing a Taco Bell.
Fast food is one of the most stressful environments because the demands on you. Fast food does demand a fast pace because we want to try to present a food item within so many seconds if we can do it.
One of these, upward moving fast food franchises in the 80s that were still relatively new and novel and just so convenient, but just a lot of these people who had formerly just derived such pride from their work were suddenly just moving from one assembly line where they were making cars and making good benefits and relatively good salary to now they were just still on the assembly line, but they were like making tacos for people, like rather than making something that was people were going to drive in and derive their own sense of pride from and be in for years and years, as it would, just driving their cars. Suddenly they're making things for people that they eat and throw away in like 5 seconds. Like this taco I just picked up from somebody. And the manager at the Taco Bell in that movie is just talking about how all these auto workers are coming to work for Taco Bell, but they only last a couple weeks because they can't keep up with the pace.
Because assembly work, some of it's easy. It depends on what you make it. This here Taco Bell, every day is a new day. Every time you turn around, it's a different challenge.
You're kind of going like, I don't think it's that. I think it's just they just don't want to work in fast food. They don't want to see all of their work be just eaten up and thrown away in 5 seconds. Just this disposable fast food. And it's a very depressing movie, Roger and Me. I can't watch it anymore. It's there's a little bit of entertainment value that you take from it, because Michael Moore, whether you like him or not, is a good entertainer. But the movie, when it came out in the late 80s, was just talking about Flint, Michigan, kind of going down the drain, and now it just seems like every American city, Birmingham included, has followed that trend. And Birmingham faced its own crisis in the 1970s when the steel industry started pulling out of here. And they shut down, and then the fast food franchises go up, the Walmarts go up, and it just moving from a society that builds things that are supposed to last for years and years and years to suddenly just everybody is consuming and selling these very fleeting products, these things that are, the obsolescence is planned. Nothing's supposed to last a very long time, and I think it's by and large made Americans quite cynical. And and here I am making money off of it. I'm reaping all the benefits. Not much money. I'm gonna keep on delivering here for a little longer, and I gotta go buy my buddy Josh a birthday present. I'm hanging out with him tonight. I'm going over and hanging out with him and Jason. We're gonna play some video games on the back deck. Probably watch some monster movies, and this weekend's my buddy Josh's 41st birthday. So I'm gonna go out and buy him just some kind of a stupid gift, some movie that'll make him laugh or whatever. So it was very hot outside, and it just kind of got to me, so I decided to dip in someplace where it could be kind of cool for a while. So I came into the humidor room down Highway 280 here, a place I've never been before. People have kept trying to get me to come for years because they're like, oh, you like whiskey and cigars, you should come to the humidor room. It's a much more corporate experience, I have to say, than the cigar bars I'm used to going into. But that's okay. It's very deluxe. They should call it the humidor rooms. They've got an outside patio. They've got a glassed-in patio. They've got a big old lounge and bar area, and they've got a room back here that's just like a straight-up sit down in a chair. And they don't have any real private areas where you can go and kind of get some work done like some of the other cigar bars in town that I like, but that's okay. I am going to get some work done today, but I'm going to be reading a book, my thesis book, Cormac McCarthy's Suttree. Yeah, I'll talk about that at some later date. I don't know. I'm just reading it right now. I'm too exhausted to talk about it in any depth. But I am working on my thesis for my graduate school master's degree. And I am writing about Suttree by Cormac McCarthy, this sprawling, big Southern novel from the 1970s. So, McConaughey Watch 2023. Yeah. As I've mentioned before, this is the summer of Matthew McConaughey in Birmingham, Alabama. He's down here in town filming a movie. They're not announcing where he's filming it. You only know where he's been once he's been there. The other day, I think he was filming at Legion Field, downtown. Yeah, I'm only mentioning this just to say it's always very funny when a movie gets filmed here in Birmingham, because the local news, the press, they just go crazy for it the most Philistine way possible, making us just seem like a bunch of backwoods rednecks. There was there was an article in the newspaper the other day that's like, Hollywood comes to town. Ever wonder what it's like to be in a big Hollywood movie? We interviewed a couple people who were extras. Yeah, just that kind of thing. Whatever, it's okay. We're not used to Hollywood movies here in Birmingham, I guess. But yeah, Matthew McConaughey has been filming a movie down here in Birmingham, a movie that we know is called The Trials of Amaziah King, which sounds pretty good. It's like a kind of a southern crime mystery, almost like the book that I'm reading for my thesis, Suttree by Cormac McCarthy. I love that stuff. I think it'll be good. Yeah, the other night, my wife Jessica got hired to go to the studio, like a production studio down the street, because she's an actress. Got hired to go down to a production studio down the street the other night and do some effects test on a green screen for this guy who's making a documentary. She's not going to be in the movie or anything, but he just needed like an actress who can move to kind of stand in front of a green screen and do some basic movements so that they can figure out how to do certain effect shots. And so I went down there and met her, and I'm kind of standing in this big studio at Leo Tischelli Studios, which is like a block down the street from where we live. And my friend is there, and he says, the last person to use the green screen, right? The green screen that your wife is on. I said, who? And he said, Wooderson. And I had to think for a minute, Wooderson. Oh, Matthew McConaughey, because he played that character Wooderson in the movie Dazed and Confused. Yes. And yeah, apparently Matthew McConaughey, while he's in town filming the movie, he's got all these other jobs that he does, like corporate sponsorships. Like he's the spokesman for some bourbon company. I don't think it's it may be Knob Creek. I don't know. That's what I'm drinking right now, is Knob Creek 100. But he's also the spokesman for Lincoln Town Cars. And so he was apparently in the studio the other night, a block away from my house, filming a commercial for Lincoln on the green screen that my wife was now using. So, yay, that was kind of nice. Standing in the footsteps of Wooderson, right? Yeah. I don't know if the movie's going to be shut down now or not, though, because the actors went on strike. The actors union, SAG-AFTRA, went on strike, along with the writers. The writers' strike, SAG, they went on strike too. So I guess like no movies are getting made right now. This movie was able to get made because the script was already written, so they wrote it. Now they're filming it, but now the actors are on strike. So I don't know if Matthew McConaughey's still in town. He may have gone home. He was renting a house over in Mountain Brook and was kind of setting up shop here for the summer, just like a temporary Birmingham resident. I think there was a story in the paper that he had enrolled his son in like a football camp here at one of the local community centers. But yeah, I don't think he can work now since he's obviously he's got to be union, right? So yeah, the way these strikes work, it's kind of crazy. Whether you agree with it or not, you kind of have to go with everybody else if you're in the union. which you kind of have to be because like everything is kind of a union gig. And I don't think even being in Alabama, I mean, even if you're in the SAG-AFTRA, even if you're in Alabama, which is a right-to-work state, meaning you don't have to be a member of a union to work here, if the job is union, you have to go on strike just like everybody else. And if you don't, you're a scab. Right. So yeah, Matthew McConaughey, I'm betting is probably not going to be a scab. So neither is Kurt Russell. I think Kurt Russell was in town also. You know, Kurt Russell from all those great movies, Snake Plissken, was apparently in town the other day filming this movie with Matthew McConaughey. So, yeah, it's wild. So I was thinking that, like, just with the writers' strike going on right now, no movies are being written, and now with the actors' strike going on, no movies are being made. So I guess like we're just back to 2020 again, where no movies are being made. Thinking about it is, I mean, it's kind of sucks because like nobody's being employed right now, tangentially connected to the film industry. You know, like no caterers or anything like that. But I don't know. It's like I said back in 2020, that with movies not being made, we're kind of in this interesting position that we are very, very rarely in, where, you know, we're always being asked to anticipate and look forward to things, to films and all that, and TV shows. You know, when's the new season of this coming out? And when's that new movie? When's the sequel to Spider-Man coming out? You know, we're always being asked to anticipate and look forward to things rather than actually appreciating what we already have. And the other night on my Facebook feed, you know, memories pop up. And this memory came up from 2020 when I went to the drive-in to see Jurassic Park, you know, the original Jurassic Park movie, directed by Steven Spielberg. And it popped up, and I had this, I was looking back on this whole conversation I was having with a friend of mine on there, who he told me that, you know, for this weekend, you know, this meeting in 2020, he said, you know, for this weekend, Jurassic Park is actually #1 at the box office again. Everybody's going to see Jurassic Park at the drive-in since they can't go to the movies and see it. It's the first time in 27 years that Jurassic Park has been in theaters and been #1 at the box office at theaters. And yeah, and I told him, I know it's kind of cool that we're appreciating what we have rather than just appreciating what we have to look forward to. So I think that's good because, you know, we are definitely oversaturated with media, and it would be good, I think, just to kind of put a pause on things every once in a while. Like maybe every 4 years or something, just go through like 3 or 4 months where nothing new comes out. You know, I have this weird thought about existence. Who has regular thoughts about existence? But I had a very weird thought. You know, because we're approaching the anniversary of Elvis Presley's death. Elvis Presley died, was it 46, 47, I don't know, 40, 46 or something years ago, on August 17th. And I always know the date of his death, or the year of his death, because a friend of mine, you know, years ago had asked this kind of weird question that I thought was a little bit profound. He said, do you think Elvis ever got to see Star Wars? You know, because he died just a few months after Star Wars came out. And I thought about that, and I was like, I don't know. Did he ever mention it? He was like, not to our knowledge. So maybe he just saw Star Wars and thought, oh, that's kind of good. And he just didn't think about it again. I don't know. It's weird because you think of Elvis as from another time than Star Wars. One of these weird things, you know, you get things from different eras that occasionally collide. So yeah, Elvis died in 1977. I didn't realize how old he was. He was only 44 years old. or 42, some ridiculous young age, which when you're a kid sounds old. Like, I've always thought of Elvis as like an old guy when he died, but no, he was just a few years older than me. And when by the time that Elvis had died, he had been through all these different phases of celebrity. From undiscovered to like teenage idol to kind of movie star, fledgling movie star, to washed up has-been, to comeback, but also kind of like a novelty act, like, when he started doing all the Vegas shows and kind of created the blueprint for the, washed up celebrity who makes their living, doing nightly shows in Las Vegas. And I'm not saying that Elvis Presley was bad at the end. I mean, he was obviously very good. He had a lot of really good music that came out of that time that he spent in Vegas, where he was essentially like almost like a slave in a lot of ways. But people nevertheless who saw Elvis Presley make that career comeback in the late 1970s were sort of thinking about him as like this guy who had been formerly great, like in the 50s and the 60s, like in their childhoods or when they were teenagers, just thinking of him as like a great celebrity. And now here he is, and he's kind of just this washed up guy trying to make a career comeback, just singing for whoever will come and see him in Las Vegas. And a lot of people came and saw him. I'm not saying it was a failure, but nevertheless, it's like that's why he ended up in Las Vegas, because he was just kind of out of it every place else. And a lot of celebrities are like that. They kind of go through these phases. And I was thinking the other day that, the average life of a celebrity, not like an actual life, but the real life of a celebrity, when they become famous to the point where they kind of become not so famous anymore, they become washed up, they become a has-been, or they're just not interested in celebrity anymore, and they like retire from the business or something like that, and they go do something else. For most celebrities, it's essentially like 5, maybe 10 years. That's how many years most celebrities are really, are in the spotlight. And anything that they do kind of after they're like mega famous is just kind of treated as like an afterthought, like an afterglow. Even if you think of like Bruce Springsteen, for instance, whether you like his music or not, Bruce Springsteen really had about 10 years of major celebrity. From when the Born to Run album came out in 1975 to Born in the USA in 1985. And then he starts going off and doing more or less like kind of experimental or smaller stuff. And then in the early 2000s, he's kind of back with the E Street Band. They're still releasing albums, but it's nowhere near what it was like, during Born in the USA. So celebrities are kind of like that. They sort of have like 5 or 10 years where they're just in the spotlight and everybody's kind of looking at them. And then after that, I guess they want to go and try other things. So they may not be washed up or has-beens in their own mind, but in the minds of maybe former fans or the minds of like the news or something like that, they kind of are. They're just not as newsworthy anymore. Okay? And in a lot of ways, they kind of fade out of the public consciousness to the point where they have to make like either a career resurgence of some kind, like maybe, like they were in a lot of really good movies in the 80s, and then they just kind of did fledgling B movies in the 90s, and suddenly they come back in a big, auteur director's film, and they get nominated for an Oscar or something like that, like Mickey Rourke or whatever. Or, they get cast by filmmakers who were kids when they were big stars, who are now making movies. This girl who was an extra on the set of that Matthew McConaughey movie the other day, who got to meet Kurt Russell, said, I'm a big fan of the Marvel movies, and it was so great to meet Star-Lord's father, or whatever. You know, I would never, ever think of Kurt Russell as, like, just being in a Marvel movie, but apparently he is, and that's how young kids know him. You know, but for guys like me, we know him as, like, Snake Plissken, or we know him as Captain Ron, or something like that. You know, back in the days when he was actually a pretty major celebrity. So I'm kind of getting around to this point that regular people are not like that. You know, people who are not celebrities, right? We kind of go through our lives doing either one thing on and on and on, or we do multiple things at multiple times, like celebrities do. They'll you know, celebrities will always perform, like Bruce Springsteen will always perform music, for instance, or you know, Kurt Russell will always act in movies because that's what they do. That's what they do for a career, just like some people may be like a banker or a longshoreman or a teacher. You know, they'll just have careers. But in terms of celebrities, you know, they have like career highlights that everybody pays attention to, and then nobody does anymore, yet they're still out there doing the same things. So it's weird just being like an ordinary person because you never really think that, you know, your life peaks at a certain point. Like you have a career highlight where you peak. You know, you just kind of like, for most people, just sort of do the same thing, and you have really good days sometimes, and sometimes you have really bad days. If you have a bad day, nobody like writes up a news report about it, telling everybody how much you suck, or you know, encouraging everybody to cancel you or something like that. If you have a really good day, it's not like you get awarded the Oscar or anything. Yeah, you may get an award at work or something like that, but yeah, it's like, it's weird because we live in a world like that, and you know, nobody's out there writing a blog about like you. It's like, oh, you know, Mike, he was so great when he was, you know, teaching for 5 years, and then he just stopped teaching, and now, I don't know, he's doing this like weird experimental thing where he's going for a thesis and writing about Cormac McCarthy books. Like, we don't really know what he's doing. He's just, you know, so we're not interested in him anymore. Yeah. Yeah, it's very odd, and just, we always kind of look at celebrities as just being these, I don't know, that's like the closest that we can think of in America to like royalty in a way, because we don't have the whole monarchy. You know, we look at celebrities as just it's like when Matthew McConaughey's in town, it's like the Queen is visiting a country of the Commonwealth or whatever. It's like everybody just kind of wants to get a peek at Matthew McConaughey or Kurt Russell or somebody. And, you know, people talk about them. People, like, I was in Savannah one time, and there was a big ruckus on the street. And I found out it was because Adam Sandler was outside filming a movie. And everybody was going outside shouting Adam Sandler lines from his movies at Adam Sandler. It's like they just couldn't get over it. It was such a big deal. But it's so funny because it would be like the equivalent of people shouting your major accomplishments at you, things that you did like 25 years ago that you have like no memory of or something like that, that really stuck in people's mind. It's like, it's funny. I don't know. I don't know if this is making any sense at all. Yeah. Yeah, but it is weird because we always think of celebrities as more or less pretty weird people. You know, if they want to stick to themselves, have their own private lives, we think of them as weird for some reason. Even though that's something that we get to indulge in all the time. Nobody gives a crap about us most of the time. We get that luxury. But when celebrities want the same thing, we don't like that. So... now I'm back on the road for nighttime deliveries. It's after 5 o'clock now. And of course, as always happens in the late afternoon in Alabama, we've got a stormy gray sky. I haven't checked the weather. I don't need to these days. I just know it's going to be hot and humid with about a 25% chance of rain in the afternoon. So that was kind of the perfect cigar store experience. I know it was kind of harsh on the humidor room before I walked in there, calling it corporate, but it was kind of nice. It was just a chill, kind of neighborhood cigar bar. I got to talking to some guy out there before I was recording, or after I was recording. I was reading a book, and he asked me what I was reading. And got to talking about, he asked me what I was doing, and I was like, oh, I'm a grad student writing a master's thesis right now. And he was saying, oh, yeah, my sister's doing that same thing. She used to teach over at Ramsey High School in the English department. And I was like, oh yeah, her name isn't so-and-so. I don't want to give her name around. And it's like, yeah, I'm her brother. And it turns out that his sister was my very first supervising teacher in student teaching. I did a student teaching assistantship before I went in and did my formal student teaching. You got to do 6 months. And I just did like a practicum with her where I had to teach for about 30 hours over the course of the fall semester back in 2010. Just this woman that I would never think about hearing from again. And there I am having a cigar with her brother. And he calls her up, and yeah, she remembers me. I guess I made an impression. I hope it was good. One of those things they say, it's a small world. It's a small world, right? People always say that. Yeah. Is it really a small world, or are we just in our own bubbles? I don't know. I do remember being in line for a ride at Disney World back in 1991, and my mom was eavesdropping on this conversation this lady was having in line ahead of us. And noticing that she was saying a bunch of the same names that my mom knew, and they got to talking. Turns out they were like second cousins. So, yeah. I don't know. Disney World's a pretty common place. You would expect people to run into each other all the time there. So I don't know. Is it a small world? Or are we just in our own bubbles? So, you guys, the most amazing thing just happened. This does not happen very often at all. I just had to pick up a pizza from Salvatore's. And while I was picking up the pizza from Salvatore's, I got another order that told me to go to Moe's before I dropped off the Salvatore's pizza at a customer's house. So I had to go to Moe's, and they were like, welcome to Moe's. And while I'm in there waiting on a burrito for another customer, the Salvatore's customer cancels their pizza, leaving me with a free pizza. Oh, that's fantastic. Look at this. And it's a freaking extra large, too. Extra large pizza on a Friday night. I didn't have to pay for it. Look at that. Look at that. Not only that, but on top of that free pizza, I also get some lasagna and Lay's potato chips. Oh, man. That's nice. Look at that. I think this is lasagna. Yeah. Oh, no, it's not a lasagna. It's a calzone. Although I think that's ham and pepperoni, which I don't really dig. That's okay. It's free. I'll have it. This has only happened like a few times before. 3 to be exact, including tonight. And normally you contact Grubhub and you say, I got a canceled order, but I got the food. What do you want me to do with it? They'll usually tell you to go and give it to the homeless, which I have done before, but I'm out in the suburbs. There's not really any suburban homeless. So, yeah. So I guess it's mine, and that's good because I'm very hungry tonight. And going over to my, as I said, I'm going over to see my friends Jason and Josh later. And wouldn't you know it, they like pizza too. So I'm definitely going to be keeping that. So I don't know why the guy canceled his order. I was very close to bringing it to him. I guess he just got a little bit impatient or something. That I was taking too long, but I got to go where the app says. I can't go and deliver the food to him and then go double back to the other restaurant. You got to do it in order. So I don't know. In food delivery, impatient customers are very, very good for business because, you get their food, and also I got a full payout for the order as well. So it completely worked out for me. And, didn't really work out well for the swine that's on that calzone, but they're already dead, so I might as well not let them die in vain. So, and now I'm back at Salvatore's behind me. It's way back there. So I got another order for pizza. Maybe they'll cancel too, and I'll have 2 pizzas for tonight for Jason and Josh. I don't know. We'll see. Yeah, and this is good pizza too. This isn't like pizza by Salvatore's. This is Salvatore's pizza. Better quality ingredients. Very, very good for a rainy Friday night. Four 16, 74 16. 16. No. 7419. Thank you. Yeah, good day. In here in this apartment complex. This used to be a part of my paper route 13 years ago. And now I'm back delivering food. What was I saying earlier about ordinary people are not like celebrities? Nobody's out there kind of looking back on your glory days or what you did many, many years ago and talking about how you've lost your way or you've fallen off track with your career or your life. You know, I guess like I'm back delivering in the same exact neighborhood I was 13 years ago. So I guess this would be the equivalent of what Bruce Springsteen getting back together with the E Street Band, or I don't know. Everybody's out there saying like, Mike, he's getting back to his roots. He's out delivering again. I respect that. I don't know what all that teaching was, man. He was so much better when he was out delivering, and now he's doing it again. He's finally listening to his fans. I did indeed, like back in 2011, 2012, when I was driving that paper route, I recorded a lot of podcasts driving through these streets. Some things never change. It's wild.
dramatic effect. There he is.
He was just like, oh.
All right, it's the next night now. It's Saturday. It's been so long since I've actually recorded a Midnight Citizen podcast on Saturday night. Many, many years ago, I hoped that that was my slogan. I put it up there on the website, the banner, the Facebook page for all to see. The Midnight Citizen for Birmingham, Alabama, every Saturday night. That was my plan. To be regular, to let people know where I was. Hopefully people in Birmingham would actually have an interest in one of their natives kind of going around the city and saying what they thought about it all. That was the kind of show that I wanted to hear when I started this podcast back in 2010. I wanted to hear somebody, it's like all you could hear people who lived in your city, but they were on the radio and they read copy and advertising, and they just weren't very interesting. They told you about the weather, but they were bound contractually to not really talk about anything else that you may find interesting about your city. So, I started doing this podcast. And ever since then, I've had a few people, from Birmingham kind of get in touch with me saying, oh, that's interesting. I know exactly where you are this week. How great. Like, I was there right next to you. Like, I posted a home movie on YouTube of a fireworks show that I went to on the 4th. And somebody commented on the YouTube page. They're like, hey, I was right there with you. I didn't know that you were there. Because, you're a stranger. So, yeah, I just always thought that would be kind of a cool idea for a podcast. Do one that anybody else in the world can hear. But more than anything else, it's for people who live in your neighborhood. And I haven't really had much success with that. And I think it's because I just haven't been living up to my promise of doing one every Saturday night. It gets tough. It's very tough to do that when you're not making money at doing something. I'm sorry to say, it really is. You got to do other things that kind of keep you alive, that make you money. That's just the way kind of it goes, I'm sorry to say. But I am trying to do this show frequently and just finding new ways to do that. One way is just to, rather than do an entire show in one sitting like I've always kind of done, just try and get more comfortable with the fact that I'm just always coming and going, and I should just pick up the recorder and just record whenever I can. Record the Midnight Citizen podcast whenever there's a chance, whenever there's some availability, and just kind of scotch tape it together there at the end of the week and put it up there for people. And that's just kind of what the plan is right now, and I hope you're okay with it. If not, I'm sorry. Eventually, I hope to maybe get back to doing some studio shows where I'm just actually sitting in the Midnight Citizen studio and just doing like a good old-fashioned night radio type broadcast. But for now, this is just how it's got to be. So, and I am filming everything. I'm on YouTube. Have I mentioned that yet? I've every word that I've said on this here episode, I've filmed myself saying it. So it is on YouTube. I started editing the show earlier tonight, putting all the audio clips together with the video, and so you can watch it on YouTube. You can watch me drive around the city and deliver food or sit in a cigar bar. You can watch me, like right now I'm sitting back where I started the show yesterday morning. in the back of my apartment building in this little like makeshift patio I've kind of set up for myself. So, with a lawn chair and a coffee table next to me and a cup of coffee. So you can hang out with me here on a Saturday night. Yeah, there we go. So, anyway, I hope your week's been going well. And yeah, I was planning on finishing the show last night, but as I said, I ended up going over to my friend Jason's house. I met him, and I met, as I said, my friend Josh, who was having a birthday this weekend. And we were all getting together to just play some video games. You know, Jason's the movie guy. Josh is the video game guy. I guess I lean more toward movies, much more toward movies. I just video games is never really. I enjoy video games, but I just never grew up playing them in the way that Josh did. But yeah, Josh brings over all of his video games and all of his old school video games. His Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis emulators, I guess. And we also play some new games as well. And last night, Jason's sister Shannon was in from Los Angeles. And along with her two kids. So Jason's nephews were there. Jason's like nephews who were elementary school aged. So yeah, we three guys, me, Jason, and Josh, were there on the back deck playing Mario Party. Super Mario Brothers Mario Party. And the kids came back and asked if they could play with us, and we kind of begrudgingly said yes. I guess we'll let the kids play the video games, whatever. So, yeah, this is just like the weirdest thing because, yeah, I don't know, man. Like when I was a kid, it just seemed like my dad and all of his male friends, you know, when they were adults, they kind of went out and, you know, did adult things like or you know, like my dad never played poker, but they would watch sports or they would barbecue or whatever. And I guess those adults still do that today. But there's no doubt about it that our generation, I think, like the elder millennials especially, the ones who kind of grew up in the golden age of console video games, have gotten so incredibly used to kind of not doing those things that our parents did when they were together with their friends, like playing bridge or, as I said, like playing poker or something like that. You know, it's like we have gotten so much more used to, as adults, doing the same exact things we did as children. I think I've talked about that in the past, and again, I think the reason why that is because our toys have grown up with us. Okay. So it's not like when our parents had toys, you know, they had like, what toys did they have? The Slinky? You know, I mean, these toys, they kept making them for the new generations of kids that would come out. And then the kids would get older and just forget about those and put away those childish toys. But with our generation, the video games got better, and they kept getting more mature, and they started marketing to us as we got older. And you know, it wasn't like you just put away the Nintendo and you never played the Nintendo again. You know, it's just there's everything that we liked as kids is we still have, and it's better, and it's for us, and all that, and that's the way that my friend Josh kind of spends a lot of time with his daughter. Is they play a lot of video games together, and they kind of share in the same culture and the same jokes, and yeah, it's really interesting. So we were playing. So the big question last night is like, are adults better than kids at video games? Because it used to be like kids were universally, you know, kids were always better than adults at video games. It was like the one game, the one thing that kids could kind of reverse the power dynamic with adults. And last night, I didn't know this was going to happen because these kids, these nephews of Jason's, had never played Super Mario Party before. Like they're really used to like games like Fortnite and things like that, but they never played Mario Party. And I honestly didn't know going into the game who was going to win, an adult or a kid. And I was really kind of anxious because if an adult won against a kid, then that would kind of make me like, adults are not supposed to be that good at video games. I just feel. I think it's always supposed to be a kid's games. Like adults can kind of participate and play, but at the end of the day, it all kind of belongs to a kid. And yeah, sure enough, fortunately, a kid won. I think the first round. I think Josh won the second round. So, but it was his system, so he plays it a lot more than any of us. So.
I'm pretty sure you're getting that.
Maybe me.
Oh, no. You definitely won.
4 stars.
First time out, you scored a victory.
How did adults lose to a kid at a video game? I don't understand how
I just started. I just started.
Yeah. That was wild, man. So. Yeah, I'm sitting out here. I'm a little bit reluctant to sit outside tonight. There's one thing about living in the city is there's a lot more crime, and you kind of need to protect yourself a little bit more. And there is a story going around like right now about this this real creepy, kind of eerie story that I just heard about before I came out here. Like my wife told it to me. It almost sounded like a ghost story. And then she showed me the video evidence. There's like this woman that's walking from door to door, not in my neighborhood, but a couple of neighborhoods over, like within about a 5-minute walk of my house. This is where this has been happening the last couple of days. There's this kind of mysterious woman of a certain age just walking the streets, kind of going from door to door, knocking on doors. And she's hauling a baby carriage, but the best they can tell from the Ring doorbell footage, the baby carriage is empty. So, and added to that creepiness, this woman has been like crying hysterically, like a banshee or something, just screaming and wailing. And yeah, Jessica showed me the video evidence that people have captured with their Ring doorbell security systems. And yeah, it's creepy stuff. I don't know, man. That's almost like one of those. It's like a. I don't know. One of the things, like when you read a lot of Southern Gothic literature, stories like that really do stick out to you. That's kind of the classic, Southern Gothic story. Just kind of this decrepit crone who has obviously lost something and is kind of finding it, going from door to door, county to county, just trying to regain something that she's lost. It's just really creepy story. So, yeah, I'm keeping my ears out, my ears open as well as my eyes open for that kind of thing tonight. So, yeah. Yeah. So what have we learned on this episode? You check out the Blackwell Ghost. Very good show that really does bend the veil between reality and fiction in found footage filmmaking. Okay. Yeah. Matthew McConaughey is somewhere in Birmingham, but maybe no longer, I think. I don't know. And yeah, remember that, keep doing new things in your life. Yeah, I'm gonna call it there, I think. I was hoping to be more profound. That's kind of the problem with not doing studio shows. Like when I'm in the studio, I feel like I'll have a lot more control over my dialogue. But when I'm just doing shows piecemeal, so much stuff has happened between last night when I recorded my last bit and tonight. But I am going to finish listening to this audiobook I've been listening to the last few days while I've been driving around and delivering and in between recording. Yeah, that's the thing. Usually, like the summertime, I love to do summer reading, and if you know me on Facebook, you know that every summer I'll read a bunch of books and then I'll kind of post summaries of them, just tell you about what I'm reading. This summer I haven't been able to do that. I've just been simply like I never believe that you're too busy for reading. But in this case, I've found an exception to that rule. I've been way too busy just to sit down and read, primarily because I'm putting all of my reading energy, my actual sitting down and reading a book energy, into the book that I'm writing my thesis on, Cormac McCarthy's Suttree, and so I can't really read any other books when I actually have time to read because I'm reading that book, I'm annotating, I'm taking notes, I'm reading a bunch of, research, scholarly articles that have to do with that book. So yeah, that's like where all my reading energy is going. So if I am reading books this summer, it's because I'm listening to audiobooks. I've got audiobooks going, and mainly it's like true crime books or nonfiction books. I can't really do fiction books with Audible, with audiobooks. I just can't do it. Just following like a narrative, a story is something that I really have to actually be physically involved in, like reading the actual words. But when it's nonfiction, it's just kind of like I can kind of go in and out of the story. It's not like, yeah, it's I don't know why. I don't know. I can listen to like a lot of true crime because it's just, especially if it's like books that I've actually read in print before. So yeah, this past week I've been listening to a book that I actually have read in print before. I've been listening to Evidence of Love, a book that was written by I think two reporters from the Dallas Times-Herald, Jim Atkinson and John Bloom, who you may know as and who I know as Joe Bob Briggs, the drive-in film critic. Yeah, when John Bloom was an investigative reporter at the Dallas Times-Herald in the 1980s, he kind of created this drive-in film critic named Joe Bob Briggs, which he's now become incredibly famous for. Like, he was pretty well known in the 90s, but in the past few years, he's been reviving that act and hosting horror movies every Friday night on Shudder. Last night when we were on the deck playing video games, I had him on my phone. He was like hosting the movie Alligator with Robert Forster. Yeah, just good stuff. But he's also a really, really good investigative reporter. And yeah, in the 1980s, he wrote this book, Evidence of Love, which is based on the June 13th, 1980 axe murder of this one woman by another woman who was having an affair with her husband. So it's these two women really active in the local church, more or less really good friends, and one of them, her name's Candy Montgomery, just kind of gives into her urges and temptations and goes after this other woman, her name's Betty Gore, her husband, Alan. So Candy really likes Alan. Candy has an affair with Alan. Betty finds out. And interestingly, it's a self-defense case. I'm not going to spoil it for you. I'm not going to tell you what happens. But Candy Montgomery kills Betty Gore with an axe, whacks her something like 41 times, outnumbers Lizzie Borden, and then pleads self-defense. And it's not the craziest self-defense story you've ever heard. Anyway, very, very, very good book. It's like the last time I read that book, I found it in a used bookstore in Trenton, Georgia. And I was going camping for the weekend at a cabin, and I found it at this bookstore, and I ended up reading the whole thing over that weekend at the cabin. It's a really just one of the best true crime books if you're into that kind of thing. Just one of those great books that kind of captures just the insane, gossipy sewing circle atmosphere of small like southern churches, that kind of thing, and the good old boy culture of the southern legal defense system, the legal system. Yeah, it's just really interesting. And fascinatingly enough, they've made this into a movie 3 times. They made it into a movie in the 1980s with Barbara Hershey, who plays Candy. And in the last 2 years, they've made 2 separate miniseries out of it. One was on, I believe, Hulu with Jessica Biel. And they just made a show on HBO called Love and Death with Elizabeth Olsen, and Jesse Plemons. And I haven't seen any of those yet. I think I saw the beginning of the Barbara Hershey one, but I haven't seen the other 2. And so I don't know. I'll probably finish up the audiobook of Evidence of Love in just a few minutes, and I'll probably maybe watch the show this week and get back to you. I don't know if it's good or not. So yeah. So that's what I'm doing. All right. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Midnight Citizen Show. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Keep your eyes open.